Hey guys, my name is Shakarez and I'm here today with a very special guest that you may recognize. That person is Foxdrop, and today we'll be discussing the magic resist changes in the new patch. With Bulwark removed, the addition of Spectre's Cowl, and changes to Spirit Visage, Banshee's Veil, Aegis, Locket, and Guardian Angel, there are a great many changes in this update. On behalf of Claw 5, this is the patch 3.10 analysis. Before we start, you can check out the related article by clicking on the link in the description. Now, let's start with the Bulwark removal, and Riot stated, and I quote, "We wanted to reposition magic resistance to be more of a personal stat as opposed to being an aura-focused stat. With these changes, we specifically wanted to create more itemization options against sustained magic damage dealers in the mid-game, as well as create more space for tanks versus late-game poke teams." So, to make MR more of a personal stat, several items were buffed and the new item was added. The new item is called Spectre's Cowl. Recipe is Ruby Crystal plus Negatron Cloak. It costs 1,350 gold and it builds into Banshee's Veil and Spirit Visage. Now onto the math behind Spectre's Cowl. The item is almost cost effective with just the base stats, as they are worth 1,336 gold alone. The passive grants 15 HP regen for 10 seconds after taking damage, so if you took damage and the passive is procced, the item is worth 1,876 gold with a 134% cost effectiveness, meaning you get the extra 34% worth in stats. To talk a bit more about the item, it's really good versus champions with dots like Teemo, Malzahar, and Brand. This is due to the fact that every tick of damage they do will refresh the passive. It's also a very good choice versus any mage that builds Liandry's Torment. Looking at the upgrades of Spectre's Cowl, both have improved in terms of magic resist and cost effectiveness overall. Spirit Visage now grants more 5 MR, 200 more health, and also gives 20 health regen. Because the passive gives an increase of 20% to HP regen, the regen automatically rises to 24 at the lowest, not factoring in the champion-based health regen. So, as you can see, the old Spirit Visage is almost cost-effective at 94%, and this is without taking into account the passive. As for the new Spirit Visage, it's ludicrously cost-effective. The stats are worth 35% more than the cost of the item, without even counting the passive. So, I think we'll see a great deal of this item now versus double AP comps, as it's one of the best MR options for dealing with mages right now, and tanks really need a good MR option to soak up damage. Now, moving on to Banshee's Veil. The magic resist was also increased from 45 to 55, the health was increased to 450, but it no longer grants mana as it does not build out of Catalyst. At a first glance, it looks a bit less cost effective as it did lose the mana on it. However, the newer iteration has a passive that grants 45 health regen for 10 seconds when the shield is popped or when you are damaged. Therefore, when the passive procs, the gold value of the item rises a lot. During this time, the total value of the stats are worth 38% more than the cost. This seems like the perfect item to deal with AP poke comps, as you'll be able to recover faster when you're hit. Guardian Angel also had his magic resist increased by 10, along with a price increase. This might not seem like much, but it kind of reverts the Season 2 nerf when GA went down to 30 MR from 38. This item is obviously not cost effective, mostly due to the super good revive passive, but the buff did make the item worth more in terms of pure stats. So that's enough for the buffed items. Let's take a look at the nerfed items, and let's start with the aura ones. So Aegis was nerfed to a high degree this patch. The health bonus was scaled back by 50 points and it no longer grants the wielder magic resist. As for the aura, the magic resist was buffed to 20 from 15, but it no longer grants armor. The total cost went down to compensate for stat drops, but the item by itself is weaker. It is no longer cost effective for the wielder by himself and now requires an additional ally to be present for Aegis to be cost effective. Despite the nerfs, it's still a good item for teamfights, and it's still a slot efficient item. Lastly, Runic Bulwark has been removed, and the reworked Locket of the Iron Solari is supposed to be Bulwark's replacement. While they look similar in terms of item efficiency, their feel in the game is very different. Bulwark was more of a heavy resist item with both high values of self-armor and magic resist, and a decent armor and magic resist aura. Locket, however, only provides MR in the aura and only provides armor as a base stat. The interesting thing is that it maintained the old Locket active. So when you activate it, the item actually becomes cost effective. If you activate Locket on yourself, the efficiency would rise to the values shown on screen. So, to talk a bit more about the changes on Bulwark, we have Foxdrop, Diamond 1 jungler and YouTuber.
Hey guys, Foxdrop here. I'm going to be talking a little bit about the new Aegis changes, the Bulwark Locket changes, what that really means for the junglers. I'm just going to read you the statement that Riot have accompanied their justification of these changes. Riot have said, and I quote, that we wanted to reduce the burden of buying an Aegis/Bulwark every game. By combining Aegis and Locket, we can more clearly push them into their strategic niche of teamfight, area effect, damage reduction. Now the first thing I want to say about this statement is that it kind of confuses me ever so slightly, because to me niche is kind of synonymous for choice. Basically, if you have niche items for niche situations, then you need lots of different items in order to fit these lots of different situations. So whenever you are combining items together, reducing the choice you have, the options you have, then they're not really niche buys anymore, because you're just going to be buying them for every single situation. So I don't really understand that as starters, but anyway, the problem with the old Bulwark was that with Bulwark on its own and your MR per level runes, which is something which junglers took quite often, depending on your level, you would often have, in mid-game, you would have over 100 MR by just the Bulwark itself and your runes. And combined with the high amounts of HP that you would be getting when you were building tanky on junglers, that was oftentimes more than enough to nullify the enemy magic damage. And when you were buying this item, you wouldn't be buying it necessarily to counter magic damage, you were just buying it because it was extremely gold efficient. So now that the new Locket gives only 20 MR instead of the total of 55 that Bulwark used to get, it's not as good at shutting down magic damage, but it's just a teamfight item instead. And because the Locket doesn't give as much MR anymore, that is going to leave a bit of a gaping hole in your defenses. The problem with junglers is that they do not have as much access to gold, so filling these holes in your defenses is a bit problematic. Normally you would just go out and buy a different magic resist item, something to make up for the lack of MR that you're getting from this new Locket. However, junglers do not have as much access to gold, so their ability to do that can be quite limited. And because the new Locket item only gives you health, armor, and cooldown reduction on the item itself rather than in an aura, there isn't really too much incentive to buy it yourself on the jungler. Someone else, i.e. the support, can be getting that item and you just be benefiting from the aura, because there are a lot of different items that give you health, that give you armor, that you can be buying instead. Alternatively, what will happen, and this is what I predict will most likely take place in the future, is that the junglers won't change their item builds. They'll still buy Aegis every single game, they'll still be turning that into Locket every single game, and the fact that they don't get as much MR anymore is just something which, it's just a nerf in their eyes. Junglers are used to taking sacrifices for the team, and so if this item being gold efficient, benefiting the team, is still really good for the team to be buying, then most likely the junglers will just be picking it up anyway.
Overall, the fact that there's only one major aura item to build instead of two may allow junglers to build more selfish items, either damage or defensive, with their newfound cash. As for supports, I predict we shall see more diversity in builds when junglers pick up Locket. In a scenario where the jungler wants to build full carry, supports can still get him themselves and have the Locket effect and a great aura for less room in their inventory, still netting increased build versatility for both. Both may end up considering buying their own copy, as the double aura will benefit both the users and the team. And this is especially apparent in cases where one of the Locket users dies a bit too soon or is out of position to provide the aura. Not to mention the fact that double Locket works well with the active. Provided you respect an 8-second time frame, both activations will grant a full shield and net your team massive boosts of health during extended teamfights. A jungler can also use the shield to soak up damage to initiate, and then the support can save the AD carry. I hope you guys enjoyed the patch analysis. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like it, and if you like the content, make sure to subscribe. There will also be links to my own channel and Foxdrops. My name is Shakarez, and I'll see you guys in the Rift.